Ladies and gents, I'm Lucy Reaction and this is Shall We Wipe Cuba Off the Map? The Cuban Missile Crisis Day 1 by the channel Time Goes History. On 16 October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis begins. President Kennedy assembled his advisor in the ExCom to find an adequate response to the threat posed by Soviet nuclear missile on Cuba. Fidel Castro of Cuba basically supported, Soviet Union, and Soviet Union started to pile on nuclear missiles at the Cuba, and basically Cuba is literally close to the United States. Obviously, there was a massive issue. Nowadays, that would never happen. Anybody who stores nuclear weapons anywhere near USA, where USA doesn't want it to, USA will bomb that shipment before it even come closest to, anywhere near the United States. But yeah, at the time where the Cold War is at its heights, there was lots of pressure going on. I watched the show, The Americans, that also saw some of that. That was just ridiculous. So in all-out war, the war is happening. You are constantly at the battlefield and doing things. Cold War, basically there is no war, but then there is a war. I mean, it's really weird. Everybody is not doing things in the background, trying to figure out what the other guy is doing, and spy work, and it was just ridiculous. KGB and shit, CIA here working. So yeah, Cuban Missile Crisis, this was ridiculous. This is gonna be fun to react to. I've never reacted to Time Goes History channel, but I know this guy. He has so many channels. World War I channel, World War II channel, and I've seen him some other channel too. God knows how many channels this guy has. So he's really good at creating history videos. So it's gonna be fun. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the reaction. There's a link in the description with all of my videos. Check out the cast for the different playlists like history, internet historian, Kazakhstan in a nutshell, CGP Grey, things like that. And yeah, let's watch this one.
The prospect of nuclear holocaust can ruin the best of days. That might be how many people in the White House feel on the first day of the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm Indy Nidell. This is Time Ghost and the Cuban Missile Crisis. The weather is foggy in Washington, D.C. on the morning of Tuesday, October 16, 1962. As the morning progresses, there's a drizzle of rain, but in the afternoon and evening it becomes a warm, sunny autumn day. The President of the United States of America, John F. Kennedy, begins his day with a meeting with...
I feel like, JFK became president only because of the teeth. Look at that. He's just like showing that teeth. Okay, that's the president. That's our president right there.
Of the United States of America, John F. Kennedy, begins his day with a meeting with one of the original Mercury astronauts, Wally Schirra, to congratulate him on his 9-orbit spaceflight 2 weeks earlier. Mostly, though, the day is spent in the fog of potential war with Cuba or even with the Soviet Union. 2 days ago, Air Force pilot Richard Heyer flew over the island of Cuba in a spy plane equipped with high-resolution cameras. The photos he brought back showed 3 installations of Soviet nuclear medium-range ballistic missile launch sites with SS-4 and SS-5 missiles waiting to be made deployable. The Soviets now have nuclear first strike capability.
USA had such a ridiculous amount of technology at the time. I mean, we are seeing Hubble, that is, Hubble orbiting the Earth, taking pictures of space. Hubble was not the first thing. The first thing was from US Air Force. They sent the same type of satellite, in the orbit, but looking down to spying on places. Basically to take data like this, what we saw, this could have been from the same satellite that saw all these details. So, they have a ridiculous amount of technology at the time. And basically Cold War signified who's more powerful. Because before Cold War, during the World Wars, obviously USA was powerful. But during the World War I, USA was powerful economy, but army, wasn't the powerful in the world. It was Germany. After World War I, World War II, there was not much of a gap. During World War II, obviously, USA was powerful, but not as it is today. So during the Cold War, basically, there was this battle between two power entities, like who's going to be the powerful. Obviously, United States won, and now United States is really untouchable. So Cold War was basically like, okay, World War happened. Now we have all these, treaties and things that's going to ensure that there is not going to be another war. But who's really powerful? So that's what the Cold War was. And this was ridiculous. They were fighting to go to the moon. They were fighting with small things. There was crisis like this. Even there was something like, people were scared about biological weapons because both side was creating it, but were also denying it, like we are not doing it. It was just ridiculous.
And can launch an attack on the U.S. mainland just as quickly as the U.S. can on the USSR from Turkey or Italy. The CIA reported this to McGeorge Bundy, the president's national security advisor, last night. Bundy tells Kennedy the news this morning at 8:45 and is now assembling the committee that will deal with the impending crisis. This group is the Executive Committee of the National Security Council, ExCom for short. Over the coming 13 days, their deliberations and actions will hold the fate of humanity in their hands. Unknown to the members of ExCom, though, the president records their conversations. Now in 2020, when the content of their meetings has been declassified, it gives us unprecedented documentation as to how this crisis was handled on the American side. ExCom was created during the Berlin crisis in 1961, specifically to avoid the mistakes that had been made during the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion earlier that same year. The decisions during that crisis had turned out, though, to be a textbook example of groupthink, the practice of thinking or making decisions as a group in a way that discourages creativity or individual responsibility. Let's have a look at the main members of ExCom and see where they stand before the first meeting. John F. Kennedy won the presidency after campaigning on making America stronger than the Soviet Union in nuclear weapons, closing the missile gap that assumed that the Soviets were ahead, although JFK was well aware that the missile gap was a myth and that America was actually already much stronger than the Soviet Union in terms of missiles. Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson supported Kennedy's bluff in order to make the ticket look hard on communism, something their Republican opponent Richard Nixon had accused them of not being capable of. Secretary of State Dean Rusk is in favor of diplomatic solutions and a limited rapprochement with the Soviets. Secretary of the Treasury C. Douglas Dillon is a deeply anti-communist Republican businessman and longtime supporter of a hard line against the Soviets. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara has been alternating between calls for a rapprochement and harder actions against the Soviets for the past year and a half. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, the president's brother, leads efforts to maintain a dialogue with the Soviets and has
He made his brother Attorney General, damn.
direct personal contacts with Russian operatives, but he is a hardliner on Cuba. Only 2 weeks ago, on October 4th, he was made the unofficial chairman of Operation Mongoose, a covert CIA-led initiative to support an overthrow of Cuban leader Fidel Castro, or possibly even prepare for another Cuba invasion.
Okay, it's ridiculous how many times US had tried to kill Fidel Castro in lots of different ways and he still didn't die. That is surprising to me. US had tried to kill somebody actively, CIA had tried to kill somebody actively and they didn't succeed.
National Security Advisor McGeorge Bundy is an ex-Navy man and a staunch advocate for a hard line against the Soviets. Director of the CIA John McCone was the first one to suspect a military buildup on Cuba earlier this summer. McCone is a longtime supporter of military action against Cuba and an advocate of increasing the nuclear advantage against the Soviets. U.S. Army Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Maxwell D. Taylor is a self-described twofold hawk from start to finish. The Joint Chiefs whom he represents are also deeply suspicious of the Kennedy brothers. Shortly after 11 a.m., October 16th, ExCom meets about Cuba for the first time. Secretary Rusk opens with a briefing on the situation. He goes on to explain the options at hand. First, he points out the possibility of eliminating the missile bases and even notes that this could, theoretically, involve the total destruction of Cuba. He then outlines the...
He just said that. That's eliminating the entire island to solve this problem. I mean, seriously. whenever people get in power, the power really goes to their head. I mean, see, yeah, we could I'm going to just give orders and basically we'll wipe the whole island off the map. Because why? We have power. I mean, man, are you listening to yourself?
Diplomatic options, including making Castro aware that the Soviets might be ready to take the destruction of Cuba into consideration in order to gain control of Berlin. This is something Soviet Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko had intimated to the press a few weeks back. In hindsight, we have multiple sources indicating that this may have been part of a ruse by the Soviets to divert attention from Cuba to Berlin and give them time to build up the secret missile sites without American interference. First Deputy Premier of the Soviet Union, Anastas Mikoyan, will tell Fidel Castro and the Cuban leadership on November 4th, "We let the Americans know that we wanted to solve the question of Berlin in the nearest future. This was done in order to distract their attention away from Cuba. So we used a diversionary maneuver. In reality, we had no intention of resolving the Berlin question at that time." The real reason for the missiles in Cuba is to even out the first nuclear strike capability created by the U.S. missile sites in Turkey. Secretary Rusk and CIA Director McCone seem to understand this full well.
President, about why the Soviets are doing this, Mr. McCone suggested some weeks ago that one thing that Mr. Khrushchev may have in mind is that he knows that we have a substantial nuclear superiority, but he also knows that we don't really live under fear of his nuclear weapons to the extent that he has to live under fear of ours. Also, we have weapons nearby in Turkey and places like that.
The president immediately assesses the situation.
How many weapons do we have in Turkey? We have the nuclear missiles. We have about 15, I believe.
Everyone agrees that the Cuban missile sites have to be eliminated, but how? General Taylor is for surprise.
We're impressed, Mr. President, with the great importance of getting a strike with all the benefit of surprise, which would mean ideally that we would have all the missiles that are in Cuba above ground where we can take them out.
He wants to mobilize forces along the Atlantic coast, gather more intelligence, and then take out the missiles. While the mobilization is in progress, he will assess the possibility of invasion, but also suggests a blockade to stop further missiles from coming in. The president opposes a blockade. In his view, it could be easily circumvented with submarines. They believe that it's unlikely that the Soviets will go to full-on nuclear war over Cuba, but Berlin might be in play. That being said,
Why won't they go to war? Because Turkey is just there, if you remove the Cuban missile bases, I mean, you are removing the leverage, basically. So USA just have Turkey and missiles at Turkey that can destroy Russia. Russia is trying to do the similar thing with the Cuba. So if you remove the Cuba from the factor, I mean, you just remove the gun from the Russia. Russia can do nothing now, while USA can bomb Russia. So, but just out of panic, wouldn't they try to, do something because of that? Isn't that incentive enough? I mean, I don't know.
is concerned that the Cubans, not the Soviets, might have control over the missiles.
We don't know what kinds of communications the Soviets have with those sites. We don't know what kinds of control they have with the warhead.
In fact, Khrushchev has considered giving control over at least the tactical nuclear arms to Castro, though control over the actual ballistic missiles has never been an option. First Deputy Mikoyan opposed giving any control whatsoever to the Cubans and had prevailed, though McNamara's fears are justified in other ways, as we'll see in a few days. In the end, ExCom agrees to draw up a variety of plans for airstrikes to knock out the missile sites before they become operational, and to seriously consider invasion plans after that. They adjourn the meeting and will meet again in the early evening. When they do at 6:30 p.m., the discussion continues and the lines now get drawn more clearly. The Joint Chiefs want to go for a full-scale airstrike to knock out all of the missiles and any and all military aircraft on Cuba. This can be done with 24-hour preparations anytime after the coming Friday. They also think that an invasion should be left on the table. Secretary Rusk wants to explore political and diplomatic options. He's especially concerned about the effects of military action on the rest of Latin America and on the NATO allies. He's convinced that the Soviets are not ready to use nuclear force. Defense Secretary McNamara argues that the missiles haven't changed anything in practice. The U.S. still has a massive advantage in destructive deterrence. The Joint Chiefs strongly disagree. National Security Advisor Bundy.
I mean, yeah, there was this incident where, sun rays basically hit the clouds, and it made the, I guess, Russian radar faulty, because the Russian radar said that a US missile is coming or something like that. So yeah, people in power in Russia basically gave an order to somebody in the command of a base somewhere to basically attack USA now with a nuclear missile. That guy did not attack USA, because that guy was in denial that there is no way in hell the USA would attack Russia with nuclear missile, because no way. I mean, why? Even with the what happened in Japan, people still like, I mean, I'm still not seeing USA basically nuking Russia. The guy was so sure of that he didn't comply with the order and didn't attack USA with nuclear missile in retaliation. And apparently that was the right thing to do, because it was on faulty radar. So USA didn't attack Russia. So the thing is, I think what Russian was trying to do is just, trying to get leverage with the nuclear bases, basically missile bases in Cuba. It's like just pointing gun at each other. That's it, just leverage. You have missiles in Turkey, we have missiles in Cuba. That's it. So maybe diplomacy might have worked, who knows.
Believes in a limited airstrike as fit punishment and a warning. General Taylor is opposed for fear of not knocking out all of the missiles. Robert Kennedy wants to know if invasion after a partial strike is an option. His main concern is that if there are any missiles at all left in place, they can be used to deter the U.S. from taking action against revolutionary activity in other parts of Latin America. The president expresses shock that the Soviets have been willing to take this enormous risk of provocation. He is undecided what action to take, but wants to know if all possible options are in preparation. McNamara assures him that they are. They agreed to continue planning for all eventualities and to revisit the issue tomorrow, and they will continue gathering intelligence via spy plane activity. So at the end of this first day of crisis, the world goes to sleep without knowing that the wheels of war have been set in motion by Moscow, Havana, and Washington. It will be several days until the world finds out, but by then the crisis will have deepened, and many of the fears expressed in the White House this day will look like they are coming to pass.
Damn.
The President and First Lady dine with guests that evening. One of them is the philosopher Sir Isaiah Berlin. In his book, Two Concepts of Liberty, Berlin argues that there are two concepts of freedom: negative freedom, which is freedom from interference, and positive freedom, which asks not what we are free from, but what we are free to do. Little does Berlin know that his host that evening has neither of those freedoms.
Damn.
This was the first episode of our daily coverage of the 13 days of the crisis. Our next project of this kind is our minute-by-minute coverage of the attack on Pearl Harbor that will air on our World War II in real-time channel December 7th this year. The teaser for that project is...
Damn, I mean, right now it is all fun and things because, we know what happened. It's just history, it's fun. But imagine being at that time, during that time, people being in power. I mean, World War just ended. Before that, just a few decades ago, there was a First World War. Before that, every few decade there was a war in Europe and some war was fighting over. So you're literally walking in on a thread. Your actions, if you make a mistake, could cause a global scale war, and now people have nuclear weapons. So everybody's walking around with intense pressure. What should we do? What decisions should we make? Should we destroy the bases? Should we invade Cuba? Is this going to do something? Should we use diplomacy? I mean, at the time, people might have the pressure at a ridiculous level that we can't even comprehend right now. Right now, it's just history. It's fun to us. But at the time, people walking around in pressure is just ridiculous. This was a great video. I love reacting to this video, man. I don't react to history as much as I used to. I think I'm going to start doing history videos now because, that's how I started my channel. And I love history. So this is fun. Alright people, if you like my reaction to food, like and subscribe. Check out the reaction. There's a link in the description. Check out the cast playlist. Check out the end cards. And I'll see you next time.